what do you say about that? How do you feel about a desk having stories to tell, a consciousness of some sort?
I believe it does. Everyone's got to believe
it's
something.
It's man-made, though. Like, at what point? I mean, that almost feels like we can't burn anything. We can't take stuff to the dump because it all has...
You could burn it, sure.
A story.
You are listening to our podcast, Do You Have a Minute?, in which a guy and his daughter dive into deep discussions about life's most profound and mundane questions. While we know we don't have all the answers, and possibly none of them, we open our minds to new perspectives, and most importantly, we have a good time in conversation. Join us as we explore the unknown together.
Okay, so I want to talk about the levels of consciousness in the animal kingdom and in humans. And I want to talk about I want to discuss what governs animal actions, and if they have souls, and, people with very limited cognitive ability, do they have souls if they have no apparent will, and things like that. It's a difficult thing to think about, but what brought this up?
You think it's difficult?
For me,
okay.
I think maybe it's difficult if you don't have a worldview that already packages the answer for you.
Okay, so try to figure it out like Charles Darwin did. No, he had a worldview, but he disclaimed it.
He disclaimed it.
But that's what everyone was watching that in the 1800s, mid 1800s, 19th century. Yeah, they were trying to figure out evolution and how everything worked. Since I've been studying that's there.
Mm-hmm.
Some people went against their worldview to try to figure it out, but they saw things that didn't match. But go from your side. You're running this.
So this German economist E.F. Schumacher wrote a book it had to have been earlier than 2015. The book has a publication date of 2015, but it says that this guy died in 1977. So this had to have been written long before 2015. Maybe this latest edition is 2015.
Okay.
I'm trying to find out when. The book he wrote is A Guide for the Perplexed. Maybe you can find the original publication date on that. But in a part of it, it says here on this theexaminedlife.org.
It says 77. 77
it
is
was
the
written in
publication date.
77?
Yeah.
So the year that he died, he published this book.
This is his seminal work. What he worked his whole life to do.
Yeah. And I think I heard that on his deathbed, he told his daughter, "This is the book. This is the most important book of my life," or something like that. So, okay. What are we beyond materiality? Okay, that's the question is, what are we beyond what our bodies are made of? And so he gave some equations. So if we have M, which means mineral, that is rocks and dirt and sand. That's just the things that are purely mineral, purely material. And then if you do M plus X, and X represents the presence of life in some form. It is alive. M plus X would be the plant world. Things that grow, things that live, like plants, vegetables, things like that. So the equation for rocks and stuff is just M. That's them. And then the equation for plants is M plus X. X being life, right?
Okay. All right, so you're animating it. The animation is the X.
Yes.
That can move on its own, self-animated, which you don't suppose a rock is self-animated. So you're saying it's M. Okay, so the next status?
Then the next level up would be M plus X plus Y, Y being consciousness. And that is the animal level. It can move, it can be trained to respond to stimulus, I guess. I mean, plants kind of respond to the sun. You can train them around things, but they can't defy you.
It has apparent thought about its animation as opposed to just following the sun.
Yeah.
Instead of just acting on basic instinct, it seems to have some thought. Can choose to eat this or not.
Yeah. And then the last level, which is the level of man, is M plus X plus Y plus Z, which represents self-consciousness. We are conscious of ourselves and we have will. Let me see what self-awareness is how Schumacher puts it. We are aware of ourselves. We are conscious of ourselves. And so that's something that animals, he's saying animals don't have. They don't have self-awareness. They have awareness of, a hot dog is really delicious, but they don't have self-awareness where I'm not going to eat that hot dog because I know it's bad for me. Or
what they should do or shouldn't do. They don't have a should question.
Yeah.
Values tend to not be there in that game. It's just instinct. That's the first word that came to mind was instinct. So MXY is an instinctual being. MXYZ is a sentient being that a self-determined being who can set values and direction.
Okay.
Separate from instinct.
I think that's the idea.
That you could choose to be a Hitler or a mass murderer if you want to be. You can choose that. Where
yes,
a regular instinctual animal can't necessarily do that.
Yeah, dogs don't bite other animals because they hate other animals.
It's not because they decided to either. They have a disease. There's rabies takes over and they go crazy and they just start eating anything and everything.
Well, yeah, that's one reason. But then also, like, if they are afraid or if they feel threatened, like, these are instinctual reactions to that. The bite is the reaction to what's happening, I suppose.
And that's the thing that zombies are. Zombies moved back to that. In the zombie apocalypse, what is that? The Walking Dead?
Yeah.
That whole series. When you get a zombie in that relationship, he's stepped back without the Z. The Z disappears. And now they're just operating.
Yeah.
They can't think anymore.
Yeah. Real
life zombies is if you gain that zombie thing because you can't get the drugs or you're off of, what is it that causes zombieism right now? You lose your medications.
Or if you've stopped.
If you have an addiction that you stopped and then it just takes over your life, you can't operate without that crystal meth or whatever it is.
Whatever the addiction is. Yeah, there's addictions to mild chemicals and there's addictions to anything that creates a dopamine high, things like that, where you can't, you are a zombie if you don't have that chemical
or if you don't
reaction
have your
happening in your body.
Depression drugs or whatever pharmaceuticals they've prescribed to you. If you can't get those, you can't function. And so you function back on the instinct level. Just, you're going to breathe. You can keep breathing, but you really can't do anything else.
Right. So the worldview, a common worldview is that all animals are without that Z part of the equation. They're without self-awareness. And that's just the way it is. If you're an animal, if you're an ape, if you're a dog, if you're a whale, you don't have it.
Okay. So that's a worldview of someone who is not an animal lover or an animal best friend. That has to be the worldview of the common human. We humans are above the animals. So that's a worldview that says we're above the animals.
And is the current scientific consensus.
You're sure?
Too.
Okay.
Like, I'm not saying that you have to only believe in a certain God to be able to accept this worldview. We don't have any proof that animals have any self-awareness. I mean, my question is, though, well, there might be proof. I mean, people are talking about how intelligent dolphins are, and there was something I read kind of recently about the language of sperm whales, I think.
It's the whales.
What
it was, President Trump mentioned this in his Joe Rogan podcast.
Uh-huh.
They talked about the wind machines that are out there in the ocean and all the whales. He says 20 years ago, 40 years ago, no whales beach themselves on the beach. And now there's hundreds a year that are beaching themselves. And it's because of the vibrations. They're not able to communicate. They're sending them,
They're getting depressed.
becoming zombies or depressed or something. They're becoming something that's not a whale anymore.
Yeah.
Because of the vibration of those huge machines in their environment. It's made them not know what they're doing. So that's something maybe to look at too. They were operating, and now we introduced another, and that's the evolution type thing. You introduce an animal that they don't know what to do with, it's going to cause them to go crazy for a bit. And maybe they will evolve in the next 1,000 years with something that will allow that noise to be in their waters, and they still can communicate.
Yeah.
Homing pigeons, I don't know how those work, but you put them into a box and drive them 300 miles, and they fly up in the air and go right back to where they were.
So is there a way for us to really know if animals are or are not self-aware?
Whether they communicate. I mean, if they communicate, aren't they self-aware? Communication, that would be that's what they're discussing here. If dolphins actually have a language, then they're self-aware.
Yeah, but I mean, birds, we know that birds have like the certain different calls that they have depending on whether they're intending like they're communicating that there's food, or if there's, or they want to copulate or things like that. Like they've got different calls for these things, but
bees have their directions inside the hive to tell you how far away something is. And, they talk about those indications. They don't have speech.
Right. So, I mean, just because something doesn't have speech doesn't mean that it's not self-aware, right?
I would think so. It's not as aware as we are. Well, humans. Trying to identify it non-biblically. I mean, biblically, the humans in that worldview were given dominion over all the animals. So
yeah, it's easy.
Biblically, that makes it easy. So that's too easy, and that's why they had this evolutionary challenge for 100 years or so, as they started thinking about that, trying to piece it together. Do these animals actually speak? And one thing that what I read just recently that Darwin is talking about is some animals their only communication is whether they're ready to breed. The birds will have a dance, and that's the dance. That's the only thing they ever communicate. There's nothing else he can identify that they even approach each other on.
Yeah.
So it's the only thing is the copulation, the propagation of the species.
We can pretty much agree that birds are simple creatures that have no actual self-awareness.
In that case, if the only instinct is to copulate or to have produce, then that's just instinctual. There's no Z there. So you can say there's no Z.
Right. So how about the animals though that do appear to communicate with each other?
Those that they've determined are closer to us evolutionarily, like the monkeys and orangutans who can actually, they can write letters. You train them, they can speak with machines.
And you can train them.
Their tongues don't work, but they do have that. And they've got a hierarchical society. Even lobsters, what Jordan Peterson talks about, where he got lobsters, are hierarchical in their nature. And they have an order, and they have a discussion back and forth between them.
Yeah. So Google AI says, no animal communication meets all the criteria for a true language, but many animals can communicate with each other in a variety of ways.
Right.
So it gives the example of sperm whales and dolphins and
and they even
songbirds.
They even have compassion with each other, right? So that's a larger communication. Horses. I saw a video of a horse herd. There was an older horse, an older stud that was out there, and the stud that was in control of it led the other one to water and helped him make sure he was taken care of. They weren't fighting. Usually you'd fight and kick them all away, but he said, no, now I'm the alpha here. You're under my protection as well. And So come on. And he coaxed him up to say, you're okay with me,
Yeah.
is kind of what he was saying. That's what the rancher said they were saying. But I don't know. You know, he did clearly talk with him and coddle him and say, you know, move up here. You're okay. You're all right. We're not going to fight anymore.
Right.
You're in the group. You're in the protected class now.
So that appears to be that alpha horse was
communicating.
Had a level of intelligence,
Yeah.
for care and compassion.
Compassion for the other animals. And when they have a herd of mares, they're taking care of them. And, you know, the gazelles or any animal that's a prey or a predator, a prey animal, they watch out for each other. And they have compassion and care, whether it's just instinctual. I don't know if they can sacrifice. Maybe that's a role, if you can sacrifice something.
So if having a language, being able to communicate with other beings in your species isn't a determining factor of whether you are self-aware or not, right?
No, I don't think that's too shallow. Self-aware.
Language is too shallow of
Self-aware has to be way
criteria.
below that. This whole question, I think it comes up because you're wondering how this all happened. Evolution, it's the evolution question.
It's part of the larger question of why do humans think? I mean, why are humans the top of the
food chain?
Evolutionarily, on the top of the evolution pyramid. Why are we dominating the earth and not something else? But is that easily explained by Darwin or evolution theory? Okay, so I'm also in the middle of a book that I've been reading for a really long time about, it's the guy that does that Ark museum in Noah's Ark Museum. Where is that at?
In Mount Ararat in Turkey?
No, it's a United States one, and he used to be a government scientist. I don't know. I don't think he is still. I don't remember his name exactly, but I think the book's called The Language of God or something like that. And he wrote this book because he's a Christian, and he is trying to explain how there is a God with science, Okay.
Creation Museum, Ark Encounter in Kentucky. I see that. I don't see the book, but the Creation Museum is next door. So it sounds like that's his point.
Yeah, what is his name, though? That's the question. I feel like it starts with F. I'll just go get it. 1 second. Well, I can't be certain that this guy is related with the Ark Encounter. But Dr. Francis Collins. This is the book, The Language of God.
Okay, Francis Collins. You've got a book and you're reading it.
He was one of the scientists that, it says on the back of the book, he's the head of the Human Genome Project.
Okay, so he's talking about these machines. I just watched a video last night in regard to the machines. I can't remember. I can identify who they are, but they're talking. He's probably talking about the fact that what is it that Darwin said in his in Origin of the Species. He said if there was a machine that was what's the term, that you can't make it smaller. A smaller thing can't be brought out of it. It's there's a specific term that they talk about. I've got to find that. Like a mousetrap. So here's the description they did. In a mousetrap, if you have one of the pieces, you can't incrementally increase. You can't increase that a little bit and make it work, or take a little bit away. It all has to be there. The machine has to be intact, complete. And so they're looking at the cells of the body. Darwin said, if I could find anything like that, but I can't find it in my observation. So in the 1850s, he couldn't see anything that was small enough that it couldn't be incrementally increased. Birds and snails and anything he could see or they could study in the 1800s, in the 1700s, was that's what brought the theory about. But now we have these small things, bacteria cells with engines in it that are built the same way that we built engines. It says it could be man-made, but it's built with proteins, and proteins run this thing that runs on its own, a single-celled animal that has cilia and all kinds of stuff that does amazing, incredible stuff that we can't figure out how it works. And it's run on energy and protons.
Mm-hmm.
So that, Darwin said, if I could find something but I can't find it, it would break my theory. So his theory is broken necessarily. And that sounds like that's the purpose of that book as well, The Language of God. It's, especially since he's the Genome Project, when you look into genes and the creation of genes and the machines that keep our body going, there's, you can't, there's a thing called ATP. I mean, we run through 10 billion of them in a day. You know, it's the whole glucose engine, the thing that makes glucose energy and allows us to do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
They now can see what that is. And it's a machine that we can't make. We can't figure it out. It runs though. And it is important all by itself.
Yeah. Okay. So the Ark Encounter guy is Ken Ham, and I don't know why I thought it was Francis Collins, but of course it's Ken Ham. I know that. The subtitle of this book, A Scientist Presents Evidence for Belief. The biggest thing that stood out to me, though, in here that's related to evolution is that this guy believes at some point that we did evolve from amoebas or whatever the most correct form of evolution is that everybody believes now. And at some point then God came in and gave us the very best version of his evolved humans, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals and all of the different forms that had evolved up to functional enough bodies, I guess. He chose the very best one and gave that one self-awareness and turned that into what we are now. And that was the fall of Adam and Eve. That was the Garden of Eden, is the two best whatevers back then received self-awareness, and that's where we all come from now. That's why we have intelligence in the way that we do, and that's why animals and apes and all of that don't.
Okay, I have to fight against that with a worldview that I'm believing exists.
Uh-huh.
And it's in the microscopic environment that, I don't know, whoever, when he wrote that book, when was that book written?
This book was
Published
2005.
In 2005.
2006. Yeah.
See, and they probably knew as much about it then. We don't know as much about it then as we know now. I mean, 20 years ago is a long time in technology.
It is a long time.
So it's a long time in technology. So that's where we're at. This is what Darwin said in this video. It's from a group called NW Creation Network. So write that down or I'll send it to you. You can start looking at this network. But talking about the wonders of God's microscopic realm. So irreducible complexity is the idea.
Okay.
Darwin said, and this is a quote from his Origin of the Species, if it could be demonstrated that any complex organism existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down, but I can find no such case. So in the 1700s, he couldn't see anything like that. But we see in the microscopic world millions of things like that. You can't break it down. It can't have evolved. It's put together 500 million proteins make this machine that pumps to create the ATP stuff. See, I can probably come to the picture of it. It's called ATP synapse.
So you're saying today there's a lot of microscopic things that we can see that
Right.
we can't figure out where they came from.
That it's a machine that we can't build for sure. It's much smaller than we can build, and it's much more intricate. The flagellum, there's a flagellum. It resembles a machine designed by humans We could make it bigger, but we can't make it do what it does inside of a cell in that small microscopic thing with protons as its only construction material.
Yeah. It's irreducible.
Yeah. Irreducible complexity.
Yeah. And so that's a sign that it was created.
That it's created by something we don't know. So it's not saying that this is God that created it, but it's a more intelligent design than we're able to comprehend.
Replicate.
So, and from Darwin's statement, the best he could comprehend at the time said, if we could find this in nature, it would entirely disrupt and break my system of evolution, which he agreed. We all have to agree that. Yeah. My theory would absolutely break down. And that's after years of thought that he put into it. And plus, he was building on the back of at least 20 or 30 other scientists that were building at the time. And now we've got hundreds of thousands of scientists beyond that are still coming to these conclusions. And this is clearly an irreducible, complex machine that couldn't have been built little at a time. So my other feeling in the dead, life after death descriptions in some of those stories, and Tim Ferriss just did. I haven't heard of this yet. He's talking to his recent interview is of someone who's seen 1,000 near-death experiences. He's written about it. He's in a position in a university that is built to study near-death experiences or after-death experiences.
Who is it? Who is it again?
Tim Ferriss has his recent podcast.
Oh, it's somebody he
someone he recently interviewed. So it's let's see who it is, because it's
near-death experiences is an interesting topic for sure. It almost makes me want to try and die and just have someone there waiting to revive me just as soon as it seems like I'm dead, so I can have a near-death experience.
Bruce Grayson, University of Virginia. Learnings from 1,000+ near-death experiences. So some of those experiences, though, and I think it's the one that 90 Minutes in Heaven, I forgot his name again. Just recently I read the book too, and he had they made the movie about him.
How do you have so much time to read books?
Interesting.
What is the deal?
I read it all. It was kind of cool. He said that the walls, the desk, had consciousness, that he could feel, and you could talk to them. You could see that they're talking. So he didn't really describe that he heard them, but there are people who in that level, in that realm, if you get to the spiritual realm, you see that they're as animate and as alive. They have memory. He was getting memories, getting stories from them, from the desk around the hospital rooms and the walls. So he was understanding things from them. And it wasn't necessarily voice, but it was how you would talk in that realm. So I'm wondering what this guy, Bruce Grayson, might have to say about things like that as well. Be interesting.
Yeah, so you listened to the Tim Ferriss episode with this guy, right?
I didn't yet. No, it's just...
Oh, you haven't
It's
yet?
brand new.
Okay.
I haven't heard it yet.
Okay. Yeah. And what do you say about that? How do you feel about a desk having stories to tell, a consciousness of some sort?
I believe it does. Everyone's got to believe
it's
something.
It's man-made, though. Like, at what point? I mean, that almost feels like we can't burn anything. We can't take stuff to the dump because it all has...
You could burn it, sure.
A story.
That was... And I still haven't figured this out. That was my question about what photons are. Photons travel for hundreds of millions of years through this, light years away. And they hit your eyeball. And you can understand them. You comprehend them. Where does the photon go? What is it? And where does it go? Energy can't disappear. Matter can't disappear. So that matter that's the desk that has a memory, the cell, that flagellum inside of your bacteria. There's another word that starts with an M. It's mitochondria. The mitochondria is a huge machine, but there are hundreds of them or millions of them inside of each cell. It's the machine that runs the cell. But a mitochondria, they know what it is. They know how it's made. It's really complex, and I don't know. It's irreducible complexity. They exist.
We
They
can't
have.
see where that
They're
evolved
doing
from.
something based on a consciousness. So they've got the Z characteristic in them. They can choose to move this way or move that way. Even a cell in dividing, maybe the cell dividing itself may look like it is instinctual, just with a MXY. The mitochondria may look instinctual until you can see that a mitochondria or a cell division or whatever the other names are, these little small, tiny, microscopic figures, until you see them change direction and go somewhere else and do something different and divide a cell a different way this time than they did before. I would expect, and I would have a belief. My belief is that they are sentient beings. The little tiny mitochondria and flagellums inside of cells are sentient beings that have memory, that have a life, and they might live for 3 days or 3 seconds, but they do their job, and that life has a consciousness and a purpose.
Okay.
Rather than,
yeah.
And the cells of the desk, the cells of this computer screen, the LED crystals, they're doing their job, but they have a consciousness inside of their job.
Okay. Would you say then that a spiritual soul and consciousness are two different things?
In my current
Like you
worldview,
can
I
separate
don't
the
know
soul.
that they're distinguishable. I don't know that they would be.
So like each mitochondria has a soul, and it has a heaven, and it has an hour darkness or a hell, and it's here on this earth to,
like what about, I mean, the first thing that
do
people start
something and then
thinking about are the ants. What about the ants? We're killing ants all the time. There's millions of them. Do they go to heaven? Is there an ant heaven that they just love?
Right.
Termites, all these things that, these are bacteria, the bacteria that kill people. What is it? This ATP synapse. It's useful. The thing that kills it, arsenic. Arsenic makes it not work. So that's what he said in this video. If you take a little bit of arsenic, all of these synapses die and the person dies very quickly, because whatever millions of things they're making every hour, every minute that we live on, the arsenic causes them to stop working.
Yeah.
And so they go to hell right there.
So, well, maybe. I mean,
they have their after-death, near-death experience, and maybe some of them actually pass over, and who knows if they come back to life again.
Yeah, so
we're trying to decide if there is the worldview. So the God-based religious worldview, if you try to map that onto everything else, can it be mapped? You're trying to see if our status of living, what do you call those things? Our
community?
Our community, if the community can be actually mapped larger or smaller than a person. We were talking about, with communities, that's a good thing to start, because we were talking about cells, and the community of your body is major complex. There's all kinds of communities there.
A lot of things going on.
The 0th tier in us has billions of matter involved in it. And maybe billions of communities, billions of 0th tiers just to make one of us work.
Right. It's like at the end of Men in Black, where you zoom out and you see that each universe is just inside of a marble, and then he's got a bag of marbles, which is like a bag of universes, and it's crazy to think about. And then maybe that's what's going on inside of everything, inside of our mitochondria. Maybe there's universes inside of that.
Horton hears a who. There's little who's all over the place.
Yeah, which Horton Hears a Who, was that written for, like, is it an abortion thing? Is that what that was written for, that story? So that people would say, see, this thing
the
is
little
alive.
Animal is alive. Yeah, I don't know. It can be used for that. What was it written for? I think it was written against evolution. Not necessarily even against, no, I don't know whether it was against anything. What was Dr. Seuss's, what's his real name?
Theo, something like that.
Yeah. So what was his purpose? What was his moral behind each of the stories? I don't know that we really have that. The archetypical story behind Horton Hears a Who.
Yeah.
But we know it's true.
I tried to open a website, but there's all kinds of pop-ups here, making me click them before I can even see it. I'm okay.
There's got to be a truth behind it.
A person's a person, no matter how small.
Yeah, so that sounds exactly like abortion.
It does.
But it's also evolution. There's these worlds that we just don't know about.
Yeah. Let's see what he said here. There's something he said. He was interviewed, and a clip, a snippet of what he said was, well, this is post-war Japan. Well, Japan was just emerging. The people were voting for the first time, running their own lives, and the theme was obvious. A person's a person, no matter how small. Though I don't know how I ended up using elephants, and of course when the little boy stands up and yells, "Yop!" and saves the whole place. That's my statement about voting. Everyone counts. It's all left over from my war experience when I was making propaganda and indoctrination films. One of them was to encourage soldiers to vote. So it wasn't an abortion thing. It was hey, you have a voice.
Was that Dr. Seuss stating that, or just someone else?
That's what the claim is here. That it says there's a link that you can go, that you should be able to go. But then I click the link and it says there's no page here on this website. So
okay,
perhaps let me see.
I think that it's an archetypical story. If it's archetypical, it can be applied to any situation.
Archetypical, yeah.
So that's what, and even though Horton Hears a Who, it's got to be a copy of something else. Well, Men in Black is a copy of that, saying, the galaxy on Orion's belt. It's not up there in the sky. It's on this little cat's necklace.
Yeah, right.
So you have confusing things like that. And inside that galaxy, there are other necklaces, other cats.
Yeah. And it's rational to assume that there's more than just our universe.
Right.
Right.
And it's hard to identify the end of an archetype. If it's an archetype and it actually occurs and we have these machines we can build, and we see these little tiny machines that are inside of every cell that we have, millions of them, and they do their specific job and they can change their mind about what they're doing. And you can't make a definite answer from all that. It's all unanswerable. It's just, that's like our conversation. What is our conversation? We just have fun.
Yeah.
What is the thing? We're wrong about everything. Maybe not right about anything, because you can't be.
But the most important part is to have fun and conversation. The good conversation.
Yeah, just enjoy it. And the great conversation continues because, these mitochondria and flagellums and whatever they are, the tiny things, ATP, synapses, they didn't exist. They didn't even exist 5 years ago, let's say, or 10 years ago. Whenever they found them, and I don't have the year on that, but I do have the year because the guy got a Nobel Prize in, was it 2014? 2011? There was a Nobel Prize on the people that identified this synapse. And it was maybe 97 was as far back as it was. So 30 years ago. And we know easily 50 years ago, none of this existed. And maybe it was only in 2017 that they got the Nobel Prize for finding this.
Okay.
So, within 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago, these things didn't exist. Now they exist. There's something new.
Yeah, well, they existed. We just didn't know.
And of course, they existed before. We just couldn't see them.
Right. So in the future, we could know how mitochondria work, and we could know where protons go, and we could know what makes a atom be.
Yeah. How many pieces there are inside a one cell atom, a one cell organism, what dividing the cells, there's all kinds of these things in there. And they know there are chromosomes, and the chromosomes do this, and then they split them apart. You can see that happening because you can see an atom, but you can't see these other smaller proton particles. You can animate them, what you think they're
Yeah.
doing, but they are
Are they doing
this.
it because they have a soul, or are they doing it because they're instinctual?
And the question is, can you answer that definitively? We can't even prove that the cat has a soul, right? That's the question, the way we started. Do animals have a Z? Are they self-aware? That is the abortion argument right now on college campuses, and everybody saying, well, you're not a person until you're self-aware. It was an interesting one that Ben Shapiro battled that question, saying, well, what if you got sick and you were going to get better, but you had no awareness while you're sick, while you're in a coma? You're just kind of a comatose for a while, but you know that in let's say 9 months, you're going to wake up and be coherent. So what if that is that person no longer a person? Is he just a bundle of cells, or is he a person still? So he's saying that, let's just say that you're incoherent for 9 months, just as a random number, and then you're going to wake up.
I just watched a guy giving his story of locked-in syndrome. He was in a coma for 10 months, and it just happened like it was something happened in his brain where he started experiencing symptoms like lightheadedness and things like that a couple of weeks before going into a coma. But then once he was in a coma, he couldn't speak, he couldn't move his body. He was conscious. He knew everything that was going on around him.
Okay.
He knew when the doctors came into his room, but he couldn't respond. He couldn't make his body respond.
Yeah.
And he lost all ability to speak and walk,
communicate,
and everything that he used to be able to do. He was a chief chef and everything, and then he lost it all in a matter of a couple of weeks.
Those are common stories. Everyone the operating room people who are awake, but they can't move, they can't talk, but they feel the pain of them cutting them open, but they can't do anything. They're conscious inside their body.
So just because they aren't able to
communicate,
do anything, they appear completely.
That doesn't mean they don't have a Z. So the Z is still there.
Right. And so how can we confidently say, though, that all animals don't have a Z?
Right. You can't. Any more than you can say that a fetus is not a person.
Yeah.
It's just a bundle of cells.
You can't.
You can't say it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say that the initial sperm and egg are not conscious on their own. The sperms currently they've got a job to do, and maybe they can choose.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing.
Maybe they're alive. Maybe it is actually a sin to masturbate and throw it all away.
But
like maybe it's
they do
morally
they
wrong
exist.
To step on bugs.
Okay, no, let's deal with that. That one egg, one sperm wins out of 10 million.
Yeah, one.
And that's 10 million in one ejaculation. That's not 10 million ever.
Right.
So
it's a lot. It's a lot that die.
And even if it's not making the baby. The sperm's job isn't to make a baby. The sperm has to have another purpose. They're just a cell that's living. It's like the mitochondria are inside these cells. Some of them may not ever develop and do their job. There are Down syndrome mitochondria that really, quadriplegic mitochondria that don't have their capacities, and they sit there for their 3 seconds of life and they filter away. But their material, their protons, whatever they're made out of, whatever the sperm is made out of, continues.
Yeah.
And it started from somewhere. Matter never disappears. You're not disappearing and opening, or even these small microscopic cells. They're going back and forth. Fully understanding the way atoms are, we're 99% space, right? Inside of us.
Yeah.
An atom is 1% material and 99% space, where the electron is flying around.
Right.
So how do we feel like there's solidness here? There's nothing solid here. in the atomic world. This is very interesting stuff to think about. You can't come to a conclusion. It's just fun.
We can't figure out how to rearrange our body to be able to go through doors without opening them.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But it happens.
Someday.
It has to happen. That's magic. Magic is just
magic.
Not knowing how it's done. Some higher order doing something that we don't know. And it's called miracles. Miracles are magic. They happen.
Right. Okay.
And so you blame that all on God. It is all a belief system.
So I wonder then if we are so set on avoiding abortion because that fetus might have a life, it is alive from the very beginning, from conception,
right?
Then why aren't we all so concerned about killing spiders or raccoons or mice or, any pest that might have, like, we don't know for sure that they're not self-aware.
You do know that people are concerned about that. That won't.
I do know that some people are, but why aren't more people concerned about it?
Because we're not all crazy and we're not all sane.
No, wait a minute though.
Crazy and sane are the same exact thing. So the sane person won't kill a spider. They will pick it up and take it outside and put it in the garden where it needs to live. Even if it's a black widow or a brown lacrosse, or whatever the spider is, they'll pick it up safely.
Say it's also like killing rodents, pests, mosquitoes?
There's a guy in town that feels like he is. I don't. We had that conversation yesterday about someone who thinks that he's gone to 1 billion years somewhere else in another planet.
Yes.
Right? So we spoke about him. There's another guy in town here, in my small little town, that has had that type of experience. And he's younger. There was someone else here in town too. I mean, these people are all over the place. Was younger.
You've got a really weird town.
Really weird people that move to small towns in the country because they can do whatever they want.
It's no wonder you moved there.
Yeah, that's why I moved here, because I'm either sane or crazy.
Uh-huh.
And they're the same thing.
Which are the same thing.
So, but he said you're killing weeds. When you're planting crops, you think you want to grow this thing, but the weeds are not your enemy. The weeds aren't the bad thing. The weeds are a good product. You have to work with everything that's there. You don't kill something. When you gain a love for the universe and for God and for all the creation, then all of a sudden mosquitoes are really amazing things. And I don't know, and bees, killer bees, or a swarm of bees that's going to kill you. You just die, I guess, if something like that happens.
It's just a part of the circle of life.
I watched a rhinoceros running down the street in India, I think it was, or maybe it was Africa. It had to be Africa, maybe. But, these animals that could kill you. What do we have that can kill us around here that really is dangerous? Black widows and spiders. You can get killed by a brown recluse spider.
Yeah, but they're not, you're killed by them by threatening them. Is there anything that
I do know someone that died from a brown recluse. Actually, it was a client of mine. Her son died at like 38 or something. He was young, but he got bit by a spider, just a spider outside of his house. Didn't really care anything about it, but it started, the venom just started eating away his organs. And that's what it did. That killed him.
Wow.
And he didn't get it tested or, it's just a spider bite. You're going to scratch it and itch it. And that's what I'm accused of. So if I ever get bit by a black widow, I'm not going to know to get it taken care of really fast.
Yeah.
I think I will with a black widow or a brown recluse. I've seen
you do have mom in your life. She will not let you just sit around and not do anything.
And that's why I have her.
That's the reason.
She'll notice this thing running up my arm and say, that's a spider bite. You've got to take care of that. You can't enjoy that itch. There's some itches you can enjoy, and we know what those are. But don't enjoy an itch from a spider.
All right, so the sane people are the ones that don't kill.
Yeah.
Is what you're kind
exactly.
of saying.
The crazy people are the ones that don't kill.
No, yeah.
Exactly. Because it just doesn't matter. That was a statement, another statement from my youth that I have to tell you.
Okay.
It just doesn't matter because all the really good-looking girls are either married or going with somebody. So, yeah, I think in reality, with everything that we can learn and study, the scientists are doing the best they can to figure out stuff, and they can't do very good at it. There's more questions you don't know. There's a curve. I forgot what the curve is called. It's called something about it. Confidence and knowledge. And it's a curve that goes from the upper left and near the y-axis and drops down. It's a U, makes a U. And then the more you learn about something, the more confident you are in that thing you learned. So that's confidence. There's some name for it. I forgot what it was. But when you barely learn something, you're really confident in it. God exists. I know God. God's here. And he's among all of us. And this is the worldview I believe in, and it's true, and that's it. But the more you learn about science and everything else, you start losing your confidence in that worldview that you held, let's say.
Yeah.
And after you die, and you've been dead for 10,000 years, as the Amazing Grace says, if I've been dead 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, I wouldn't know any more then than I know now than when I first began. So you realize that same worldview you have, if God's there more confident after 10,000 years. But you gain confidence through time. And whether that's the story that you're telling, Amazing Grace it's of course that worldview.
Yeah.
We look at evolution and what Charles Darwin was trying to figure out. As he wrote, he lost all confidence, and then he gained confidence because he came to the end. He started with a Christian worldview and said, this can't be. I see the evolution, but if we saw anything smaller, it would break my theory down, and I'd lose all confidence in my theory. But his theory, when he died, was very strong. He wrote the book, a 200-page book, and it indicated the origin of the species. He said, I pulled this all together from everyone's writings, everything I've done, and it seems right to me. It's the seminal work of my life, just like that one that you have in your hand, right? That book, whatever that book was.
Oh, the one that I talked about was a guide to the perplexed, or guide for the perplexed. Yeah, and the language of God is probably one of Francis Collins'
final works
best
as well.
Books in his mind. Yeah, and it is pretty good. It's interesting. So that's something
they get to the
makes
end.
me think about things.
That doesn't mean that that's the final end all on those thoughts, and it's not.
Right.
Socrates' statements and Aristotle's statements, a lot of that stuff still lives. The archetypical stuff lives, but even the archetypical stuff is likely to come to an end at some point. Or there's going to be something bigger that says, we were trying to say this, but this is the right way to say it. So all these stories are now garbage. They're unreliable because now the way that it's encompassed in this story is much more important, much more valuable, much more descriptive of many more things.
Once we know better and we start treating beings better, like they have a life, like if we somehow find out that we shouldn't have been killing ants all along, and they really did matter.
Go with that. See where it takes you.
And we find a way to communicate with them. Should we offer an official apology? Do you think?
So should Kamala Harris apologize for killing these girls with her open border policies? Because she's not apologizing. She's saying, I feel very sad for their loss. But she's not taking it on as it's her responsibility. It was her responsibility that allowed these illegal aliens in that killed these kids. And those are only the few. I mean, there's maybe a lot more murders that aren't making it in the public scene, but at least those in the public scene. And they've asked her point blank, will you apologize? Kind of what you just said. Should we apologize to the ants? Or should there be reparations for slavery?
Right. Should there be official apologies made? I'd heard of an official apology made kind of recently. I mean, and it makes sense, but it feels like, why? I don't know. Am I evil for thinking this? It feels like apologizing to the Native Americans is a pointless endeavor. Like, sure, I would love an apology. People are like, but they've never actually apologized for what they've done. And I'm like, well, are they still doing it anymore? Why isn't that enough? Like, why do they have to actually come out and say, I'm sorry? I mean, that's a lot of ex-Mormons are angry at the church for never apologizing for their
cover-ups,
for their long, everything that has harmed people by making them believe that they were going to go to hell if they did something.
The way I see that, it's the primary answers, for teaching the primary answers.
Yeah. And the church is just not apologizing for any of that. And so I'm going to remain angry until they apologize.
So who's crazy in that, or who's sane? Of course, the person is sane because now they left this crazy institution. But the institution, of course, is sane crazy because they're not worried about that crazy person that left.
Right, but they're crazy. Yeah, the person is crazy because they won't let it go. They won't recognize that they can't make someone else do something. But yeah, apologies. Apologies is something else. Because why does it have to be necessary?
And why do you have to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Persons Day?
Yeah.
So it's not Columbus we're honoring now, it's the natives that he overtook.
Yeah, but that was all just how it happened, like how it turned out. We're here where we are because everything happened the way it did from the beginning of whatever
Shakespeare
to now.
Put it perfectly. In the quote, one of the quotes, there's nothing either good nor bad, but thinking makes it so.
Yeah.
So that came artifically. I don't know where it came from before Socrates, or Shakespeare put it in the play. But there's nothing either crazy nor sane, but thinking makes it so. And nothing either evolutionary or creationist, but thinking makes it so.
Right.
We don't have the answer. We can't have the answer. I'm more convinced. Yeah, we should stop talking because I get more convinced all the time that we can never know anything.
We can never know anything.
It's just...
So how do you operate?
I think that
based on not knowing anything. Those
philosophers, that's Jordan Peterson's got... I think he says this quite often. He says, we don't know. I don't know. The prophets, the apostles, someone who thinks is a prophet on the earth that is supposed to know everything, they don't know everything. They don't know even what the next day is going to happen in their responsibilities. They don't know that. There's no, they say the prophet can see around corners. Sometimes he can see around corners, but no one can see around the corners that are going to happen. Christ even said, scripturally, no man knows, even I, but the Father knows the time and place. And maybe the Father doesn't know.
That makes you wonder why prophets are called prophets, because if they can't see around corners any more than you and I can, then what is the purpose of that?
Go ahead. What is the purpose of having an ant and a mouse and a cat and a dog and a horse? What is the purpose of any of that? Hierarchically, why are there people on the earth that have dominion over anything supposedly?
Yeah, there is no purpose.
Yeah, a prophet's just a person. If you talk to him, if he happens to be your grandfather, the prophet, he's just your grandfather. He's not a prophet. That's just grandpa. It's nothing special. The Pope is just someone's dad. That's who the Pope is.
Wait, did the Pope have children?
Oh, I don't know. He probably is someone's dad because he wasn't supposed to have children.
He wasn't supposed to.
Yeah, I just broke the whole news thing. This is going to go viral because the fact that the Pope has a child. Pope Francis may have a child. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know what their rules are, but
Well, their rules are not to have kids. Yeah, they're priests. He's been a
Yeah.
priest and a monsignor and a bishop, and he's gone up the
that's your life. The church is your child.
yeah. He's a celibate. Any Catholic priest is
But
seen to be celibate.
he is somebody's friend.
Somebody's friend. He's someone's child.
Yeah, so
He's just
but he is
someone's son.
He's just a guy.
Yeah,
He is a son. He has to have a parent.
has to have a parent. Yeah,
That's for sure.
but they're
All these people, yeah,
they're
are
just normal people.
Normal guys.
They have a job to do, just like you and I have a job to do. The reason we're here in this conversation isn't because there's anything special about this conversation. And even after 10 million people see it and say, golly, this makes a lot of sense, it still doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Peterson is a nobody. And
Yeah.
I think he'd be the first to say that. He's just filling his role while he has the chance and he has the voice.
Right.
If he had died 5 years ago when he went through that catastrophe, would have been just the same.
Mm-hmm.
And if God didn't vote for Trump 3 months ago and he was dead,
God
would be just fine.
God voted for Trump 3? Oh,
Yeah.
right. When he
When he turned his head just the right way for the
attempted
bullet
assassination.
to miss his brain.
That was God voting for him?
Yeah. That was in the
No.
recent Madison Square
You're
Garden thing.
supposed to be president.
It was the comedian that started the thing out. He said, we get to vote in through 2 weeks. God voted 3 months ago. So
Uh-huh.
it's kind of a interesting way to say it, but it was a realization. Yeah.
Yeah. That is interesting. And I would say more about that if I wasn't afraid that someone would hear it and call the cops on me.
Yeah,
But no one will
don't say
hear
that
this anyway,
because
so it doesn't matter.
I might be upset with you if you say that.
Oh, yeah, you don't even know what I'm going to say.
Right.
I'm not going to say it.
Have no idea.
I'm thinking it, though.
Okay. Think away, and it won't matter because it's crazy and it's the most sane thing you could ever say
Yeah.
at the same time. And those are really mean nothing in themselves. They're just words that are attempting to make an understanding, bring understanding to something. All of our words, I think we started out with one of those statements, is all of our words don't mean what they should mean. We need to adjust them all the time.
All the time. Yeah. We're always having to choose better words.
And if we
Okay.
have to use a word, we have to adjust what it means to us.
So if you are... everyone's just got to decide what their morals are. Is that what you're saying?
Their morals, their
Because-
values, morals, values, beliefs. It's basically what you believe.
Yeah.
Your deepest held beliefs
And
are your
everyone has to
religious
decide
beliefs.
that for
It's your
themselves.
morals, it's your values. And we talked about that value challenge a time or two ago. When you should do something, you apparently value something differently. So you should let your values inform what you're doing, whether it's the right thing
Right.
that you should do or
Absolutely.
not.
Yeah. So that then means that there is no objective truth as far as what you should value or what you should believe.
Consequently, the Jordan Peterson and what's his name? They battled against truth. They haven't spoken for the last little while.
Oh, Sam Harris.
Sam Harris, yeah. The Sam Harris who believes there's objective truth. Certainly there's objective truth. And Jordan Peterson says you can't have objective truth. That doesn't exist. And in trying to explain that, trying to come to a definite conclusion that now you can prove to everyone that it's wrong to kill Lance, or it's right to kill Lance.
Yeah.
Yeah, objective
Yeah,
truth.
that's impossible.
Where is it?
Okay. Everyone chooses.
Even do
their
you
own.
believe in God? Jordan Peterson's reason for not liking that question, because how do you define God? What is the God? Hey, where does the question come from?
Yeah.
There's a God.
It's not necessarily the same God
Yeah.
that you believe in
Right.
or he believes in.
and you
or-
don't even know the God you believe in. It's a belief you put out there, but you don't have any objective proof that that's the God you're believing in.
Mhm.
The name is way too big. God, especially God, the term God, is a lot bigger than the term ant. And we can't even identify how many ants there are on the earth, or how many kinds or varieties even, probably.
Right.
So
Yeah.
God's much bigger than that.
Ants are bigger than we can comprehend.
Yeah. And they're little tiny things, never bugs.
Yeah.
And what's inside our cells, all these flagellums and mitochondria and all kinds of things that we're naming, we didn't create them, we didn't make them. We don't know what they do, really. We know what they do. We don't know how they do it. Don't know how it's done.
Yeah. And we can come up with theories, but we still don't know.
Yeah. And even the way we describe how we think it's like the cilia, they know there's these connecting pieces, but they can't see those pieces. They're just assuming those pieces because the way it moves, and this is how tiny it is, and it must be a proton, but we don't know how the protons are attached together and how they get their different assignments. So because it's so small, it has to be a proton, because an electron is way too big.
I have another question then. Is it more useful to admit that we know nothing, or is it more useful to present your beliefs as I know this?
To try to persuade our belief system, our understanding.
Yeah.
Persuade other people with our understanding. That's a question. That's a good question.
That is. It's maybe we don't have time for that question
because we
right
know
now,
in reality that we don't know. There's no way we can know if, with as complex as things are, and everything's stupid, everything's crazy and insane, everything is both. But
yeah,
our role in society, it's community. It's got to come back to community. That's where we started in the whole structure of the life I'm building and we're trying to build. The conversation is based around community. If you're going to operate in a community, you have to have some common ground. And so that's where you persuade.
Yeah.
You persuade a common ground. And that's where we say, if you find someone that just doesn't match your community, you're fitting in. What was that? It wasn't fitting in. What was the title of that one?
Well-roundedness.
Well-rounded.
I think. Yeah.
You're going to be well-rounded in a group. That well-rounded group is going to have commonalities with them. They're going to fit in.
Yeah, and you're all going to think the same things are true.
And you're going to have a persuasion. You're persuading each other that this is true. If someone comes up with a new idea, it may still work in the group. The group will have to all adopt it and agree.
Yeah.
To stay there, or else someone that doesn't agree is going to split off. They're going to disappear. They'll go somewhere else. So we do have to be persuasive. We do have to have beliefs. You can't exist without beliefs. That's a non-existence. You would disappear. You'd disappear if you tried to not believe in anything.
Okay, so you have to choose what you believe, and you acknowledge. Is it useful to acknowledge that you chose that belief and not that it is particularly the true belief? It's the one you chose.
It's your belief right now. And truth, gosh, you have to believe what's true as well.
Yeah, I am not okay with believing something that's not true. And so how can I even be sure
you're saying you're
that
not
everything
okay?
that I'm believing in?
You're not okay believing something that's not true. You're not okay believing in something that is not true.
Why are you saying it like that? Like I have to hear it again to see where my false...
Say it again. Yeah, you're not okay believing in something that is not true.
Yeah.
Who's to say that it's true? Let me ask that question.
Me.
You. Excellent. Your belief. So your belief system is based on your belief system and nothing deeper than that.
It's based on what I think and what I perceive, and yes.
So hopefully, do you still believe in evolution?
Yes, but but my beliefs are limited to what makes sense, I suppose. So like, it's almost easy to believe that there were other intelligent communities on the planet before everything was wiped out by some big
asteroid
event that burned up the whole earth.
Okay.
And left only a few things to turn into us again, to turn into all of the... Because, I mean, evolution black and white evolution says we all came from this little mitochondria and amoebas and everything that's grew in swamps and got bigger and differenter, and so we all have that one common ancestor, or possibly 5 or possibly 100, all created themselves all in this way, right?
Is there,
Like, maybe it wasn't one thing.
maybe the Big Bang wasn't just one thing. It might have been a lot of them, but evolution means it possibly was just one.
Yeah. But possibly, like,
So you're
there's...
still trying to put
I don't believe that there was a beginning. It's difficult to imagine that there was a start. I think that, I mean, this is too big to talk about right now.
Right. It is. And so that's where my simple answer to that, it's the crazy sane idea.
Uh-huh.
Every truth is crazy. Every truth is true. It doesn't matter what it is.
Okay.
We're in it's a dualism. That's what we ought to talk about, dualism sometime in reality. It's either true or false. And there's no other option. So it is both true and false because there's no other option.
Okay.
So you have to choose whether you believe it's true or whether you believe it's false. Your belief is what positions it. There's nothing either good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. It's your thought that makes it what it is.
Yeah.
And so you don't know that it's true. There's no way you can know that it's true because we can't figure out how the mitochondria work. We know they're there, but we don't know that they're true.
Huh. Okay, and then does it matter? Do I need to know? Do I need to decide whether I believe in evolution or not? Or can I operate just as well in my roles on this earth, in this life, without knowing?
Not being able to
Without
see
even
around
caring
corners.
whether I know.
So seeing around
Yeah.
corners. Can you see around corners? Do you know? Do you know anything? And that was your question. Should we just say we don't know anything, or should we try to persuade others that we know what we're talking about? Should we have a belief? Should we hold a belief, or should we hold no belief?
Yeah.
And you can get into a problem because you could say, I believe this, but I believe this. I believe true, and I believe the false. I believe that Nazis are completely right, and I believe that Jews are completely right.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems you can't believe those things at the same time.
Right.
But you can. It depends on what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I believe that the Democrats are a wonderful party of people, or that their plan works. I have a definite opinion against the platforms of the Democratic platform or the Republican platform. But my belief is that it doesn't matter which way we go, we're going to survive it.
Yeah.
We may not be better off necessarily in the nationalist plan. There may be other things in play that if we just go full nationalism and make our country great again, that's going to hurt us. It's possible.
Right.
It could hurt us. And the other side, the globalism and saying global warming is going to kill us all if we don't solve it this year or by the 2030.
Yeah.
Maybe they're right, but maybe by solving that issue, other things are going to happen that we don't see yet that are going to kill us there.
Right. I mean, we all are going to die at some point anyway, but whether it's all together or not.
There is no truth between those two. It's just which way you decide to go. And I decide to go with the nationalism. I think that's a better plan. I'd love to follow that path right now, as opposed to the globalist path.
Yeah.
So it's where I'm taking my next step. That's all. And whatever you get involved in, you just be involved. So your statement of, I can't believe in anything that's not true.
I don't want to believe. I'm not, what did I say exactly? I'm not okay with believing things that aren't true.
Believing things that aren't true. So the question on top of that is, what's not true?
What's not true,
What's
right?
Not,
and
how
I
can
think,
something be not true? So that may be a discussion we should talk at some point.
yeah.
How could you
And
possibly
to
make
start
something
with,
untrue?
To cap that, I don't know, to do something with that, to answer that just real quick is right now, I think that everything I believe in is true because of that.
Yeah, because of your belief.
Of course. Yeah. And when I find something out, something new, then I have to change my belief. I'm not going to continue believing in something when I hear something that contradicts its truthfulness.
Is it the first thing that you hear? How many things do you have to hear in order to contradict truthfulness?
I suppose it could be many. I mean, it did take me a few months to lose my belief in Joseph Smith as a prophet. So,
and how could that be lost? So how can you refute truth? How can you say something isn't true? Is it possible to say something is not true? That's
I think that
the conversation I'd like to go
demonstrated
to.
that it isn't. Yeah.
We don't have time.
Okay, we'll talk about that. What is truth is a future episode that we will have.
What is truth? Oh, say what is truth. That's the scripture. That's the song, yeah. But
Okay.
what is truth? And how can you break it? I don't, yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at it, that's good. Because what
we'll
we've
talk
talked
about it, but we certainly won't
with this,
figure
what was
it out.
the topic here was consciousness. Is consciousness truth?
Self-awareness. How can we...
Self-awareness.
Yeah, the real question I wanted to see if we could answer was how can we say something is self-aware?
Yeah. And that got us into...
Or not.
Amoebas and microscopic things and universes inside of marbles.
Yeah.
Are they self-aware? So the self-awareness, that is a question. That's you have to consider that in regard to truth as well. The Horton Hears a Who, the microscopic world, is it just as alive and just as aware as we are in this earthbound world? And is it just as aware in the universal world and beyond the universe, outside this universe? What happens? Is there awareness? And that's the Z. So is that Z in his book? Does it mean
in
anything?
Schumacher's book.
Is it true? Is the Z true?
Yeah. Okay. That's it's mind blowing. That's what it is. Thinking about this.
It took us all the way around that. He's trying to describe something very simple and very direct and put a linear equation to it. And is that possible? That's why we have spin physics and quantum physics, because these things are not explainable.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Okay.
Let's see what happens with that. The problem is I think this is too much fun, and I'm enjoying myself too much with all of this. But it is fun. It's a place to go.
It's a thing to do.
Who doesn't like it? Who could not like it? I don't know.
Yeah.
That may be the discussion about truth is, yeah, there's too much. We've talked enough. Enjoy your day. Good luck thinking.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Just think about something else.
Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We appreciate you taking time to listen. We'd love to hear your feedback and thoughts. Please continue the conversation with us at doyouhaveaminuteconversations@gmail.com. Your participation means the world to us, and we look forward to sharing more exciting conversations with you in the future.